And Mr. Rowe, you think from the 80s the situation changed in Southeast London? Are things better? Are things worse? What do you think?
I think technology brings about education, and I think as technology and infrastructure and things change, more opportunity, jobs, money, of course, environments change. Southeast London has changed. When I was arrested and went to prison for crimes I didn't commit, mobile phones didn't exist, the internet didn't exist. When I came out, phones existed, the internet existed, people could expose themselves to other cultures, other environments, the way that other people think. So, yeah, the world has expanded in Southeast London as it is anywhere else in the world from the comfort of your bedroom. You know, you don't have to leave your bedroom to explore, I don't know, Sao Paulo. You know, you don't have to leave Southeast London to experience the beautiful beaches of Brazil or the food or the music. It comes to you now. I mean, I would urge people to go and see it for themselves. But that's the reality. And I think when I was growing up in London in the 80s, you weren't exposed to that. You know, you didn't have the money to travel, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have the things that exist today for you to enjoy what other people are enjoying around the world. And that can have a significant impact, I believe, on the behavior of people. I really do believe that. I believe that, you know, people can expand their horizons, their expectations, their languages, everything and anything you want now is there at your fingertips. But in the 80s, and I make it sound it's not that long ago, but in the 80s when I was growing up, in the early 90s, I was in prison for the whole of the 90s. You know, I went in 1988 and came out in 2000. So I didn't see a day of the 1990s, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000. All those years I was in prison. So I don't know what it was like in the 90s. But in the late 80s, um, you know, people were confined to their own small bubbles.
Yeah, the internet totally reshaped the world, right, Mr. Rowe? It's like a total new historical context, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't just the world, was it? It's individuals, is what and I know that's what you mean. It reshaped individuals' way of thinking, behavior, and interactions. You know, look, I'm sitting in an office in London. You're in where you are in Brazil, and we are having a conversation like we're in the same room with each other. That's the difference. Technology can make that happen. We can share insights and experiences to inform and educate other people, and there's something really beautiful about that.
And Mr. Rowe, like expanding on your books, Notorious and then You Are Accused, how did the idea of writing those two books came about and how do they differ? Like what was your main idea with each one of them?
Notorious was very simply something that I wouldn't do for 20 years. So, and when I say that, I mean when I got out of prison in 2000 and embarked on my journalist career, publishers and book people came to me wanting me to tell my story, write my book, but I refused to do it because I just wanted to enjoy life and do what I was doing. I didn't think that I had much to say. And then when I had my children, that was even more reason not to write my book, because if I was going to write an honest account of my story or some of it, because you can never capture it all, then I would have to share that I had children, and I was not prepared to do that. So Notorious didn't come about until 20 years after I was first asked to write the book, because I had people to protect, family to protect, and other stories to protect. It's one thing writing about your own story, but every time you tell people a story about yourself, you're telling them a story about other people, right? You're including other people, and it's not my place to do that. So Notorious, I eventually wrote because I found myself in a position whereby I felt I was comfortable telling people that I had children. I was comfortable telling people about some of my own personal life that they would have been unaware of. But I was also aware that my profile as a celebrity journalist, presenter, could be of benefit to other journalists, could be of benefit to people who were going through a similar experience to me, but also about just sharing my story, because the general public from around the world wanted to know more about who I was and what I did. And they were sending me messages through Instagram, social media, Twitter directly, asking me about myself. So it's really hard not to want to share. So eventually I decided to write Notorious, which is really a story about where I come from, how I ended up in prison for a crime I didn't commit, what that experience was like whilst I was in prison, and some of the people that I met, notorious gangsters, etc., the Cray twins, how I fought to get out of prison, and then how I became a journalist. And then it stops. It kind of stops there. So there might be a Notorious #2. So that's how Notorious came about. A simple, straightforward printed book and digital book that people can get through my website or through Amazon or wherever. And You Are Accused came about because the production of my podcast, Second Chance, meant that I was very privileged to speak to people from around the world who talked about being accused of things that they hadn't done, or were accusing people of things that they had done. And this isn't just about crime and criminality. It was just, I spoke to an American guy who talked about being accused of the manslaughter of another man in China, and he ended up in prison. And then they realized it wasn't him and they let him go, and he'd been wrongly accused. He wasn't convicted or sentenced, but he'd been wrongly accused. I met a man in the United Kingdom who was accused of horrific rapes by a woman who had made it all up. And he went to prison. Luckily, he wasn't convicted because she was exposed. And so he shared what it was like to be accused of these horrible crimes of rape and how it impacted his life, etc. I talked to other people about their experiences. Here we have a big story around people being wrongly accused of being involved in things that they were not involved in, but equally people from around the globe. So I thought I'd write a digital book, which is available, called You Are Accused. What's it like? What's the wider impact that being accused can have? I remember when my son was young, and he was probably about 13 years old. And I can't remember what it was. Maybe something had gone out of the fridge, a bar of chocolate that was mine. And I remember sort of saying, "Who took my chocolate?" And he sort of said, "It wasn't me." And I said, "Yes, it was." And he said, "Well, it wasn't. And you know what it's like to be accused of something you haven't done." He said it in a joke and we laughed about it. But it just resonates, doesn't it? The impact of being accused for something you haven't done, whether it's a crime, whether it's cheating on your partner, whether it's going somewhere that you said you didn't go, whether it's spending money that you don't have, whatever it is, when you're accused, it has a ripple effect and a consequence for lots of different people. Because if your partner's accusing you and you're saying, "But I didn't do it," their family believe you did do it. And the ripple effect is what's really important. How does it impact on the wider community or the wider family? So being accused by a criminal justice system, being accused by your employers, being accused by your partner, being accused can be a really impactful. You can lose your job, you can lose your reputation, you can lose so many things when you're accused of something that is or may not be true. And then it's also about what resources you have. People who are very wealthy who are being accused of something can buy the right legal team to make it go away. People who are poor can't and will end up in prison. So I was really trying to explore the consequences of the ripple effect of being accused.